Hi guys, thanks for joining me on the Reno Q&A show today. I'm talking about flooring, and it is one of the bigger investments you're going to make in your renovation. And there are a number of options you can go with, namely tiles, carpet, vinyl or timber. But how do you ensure that you're going to get the maximum benefit from the floor that you choose, and to avoid the pitfalls that can cost you lots of money when you're doing this? Now, if you're selecting carpet or vinyl, then there's what we call a softer floor. They're not a resilient flooring. And understanding what preparation is required on the existing floor that you've got compared to if you're laying tiles or timber flooring down. Now let's look at the different surfaces that you might have in this situation. So the most common surface is concrete. If you pulled up a floor or you're renovating and you've got a concrete slab, whether that's a new concrete slab or an existing concrete slab, the biggest risks with concrete are moisture. Now you might find that you pull up the floor and you go, this is dry. But if you've got a professional coming in, they will always use a moisture meter to understand what level of moisture is in that floor, particularly if you're using things like timber or carpet or vinyl that are affected by moisture. But even with ceramic tiles, it's good to know, do you have any chance of vapor? Because it's not always dampness that you'll find, but it could be moisture vapor that could be coming through that concrete slab, and that could impact your floor finish. So my advice is always to get a professional to do this sort of work. However, if you are taking this on yourself, ensure that you understand what moisture levels are in that concrete. Now you can get moisture meters, but like I said, a professional, if you're dealing with the right tradesperson, will have a moisture meter on them, and they will measure the level of moisture in that concrete slab, and then you can detect what's there. And what they'll normally do is put a vapor barrier on the concrete slab before any finish goes on top. Now what a vapor barrier does, it stops any moisture, residual moisture that could be in the concrete, rising and either staining or affecting your floor. In the worst case scenario, it can actually lift your floor like timbers, but it can really create issues with staining and that damp, mildew, moist effect, which you don't want. So a moisture barrier or a vapor barrier is what you'd put on a concrete slab first, and it will protect your finished surface from any rising damp in the future. And if you've got an old home, you might find that over the years the damp course, the original damp course that's under that concrete, could have broken down, and that rising damp will affect your flooring. Hence a moisture barrier or a vapor barrier is very important to install prior to using your floor finish. Now if we go to things like timber, when you pull up floors, I remember some of the renovations I've done in the past, you pull up old carpets and vinyls and you see these great timber flooring, and you get excited. I remember when my first house I bought with my wife, we looked at that and we saw this Jarrah and thought, fantastic, nice red Jarrah, but you need to look for a few things. Firstly, termites. White ant damage is really important to understand here, and that's something you need to get a professional with. You can't just go and look at it yourself and think, I can't see any white ants, or you might see a bit of timber dust and think it is white ants or termites. It may not be, but get a professional in. It's worthwhile doing that. Get them to do an inspection on your flooring, and what they'll do is they'll get in underneath the timber flooring and do an inspection of what activity could be there. And if you need treatment or retreatment, now's the time to do that, because if you don't treat the timber flooring, you may find that whatever you put on top of it afterwards is going to be compromised. So termites is the big one. The second one is also dampness with timber as well. Now it could have been an old wet area, or it could have been moisture affected even from earth, with vapors from the earth that are coming up into the timber, absorbing into it. And timber is something that's very, very sensitive to moisture. And when timber gets impacted by moisture, it swells. So if you're going to look at something like a tiled finish on top of timber, or timber on timber, for example, you need to ensure that you've got the timber protected and treated. Now, with ceramic tiles, you'll do things like a tile underlay. Now that could involve putting a new sheet of timber flooring down, or cement sheet flooring down, or there's a number of other underlay systems that are out there now that you can put directly over the timber flooring that will prepare the surface to enable you to put your ceramic tiles on top. A good tiler will always ask that and may even install it or quote it in their pricing. But if you're doing this work or you're preparing for it, ask the questions first, check and look around, because tiled floor can be very, very expensive, and it's important that you get that part right. You do not want to go start tiling on a floor, even if you've got a flexible tile adhesive, and then find you've got cracking and grout coming out and chipped tiles, it's important to prepare that floor first. So a tile underlay system is critical on timber flooring. Now, if you've got tiles that are going over old tiles, and we get this sometimes, if you're going over existing tiles, if you've got the heights, because if you can do that, it will save you a lot of money instead of removing the old tiles, because removal of old tiles can cost lots, and these days building waste will sometimes cost more than buying new building materials, believe it or not. So if you've got that situation, you need to understand what is on the tiled floor. Now, they would normally be glazed tiles, and you would prepare that by giving it a good clean first, and then there are specialty primers out that you can apply onto the tiles that allow you to tile on top of tile if it's in a dry area. If it's a wet area, then obviously you'll have to waterproof that first before you put the tiles down. But these are all the questions to explore and understand before you start laying your floor finishes down. Plan this pre-doing anything, understanding what that flooring is. Is it concrete? Is it timber? If it's timber, what type of timber? Is it timber floorboards or is it timber sheeting? Or if you're going over an existing floor, what you need to prepare to be able to go over the top of that. So let's wrap up these key points of how you renovate your flooring systems when you are renovating your home. So firstly, wherever possible, ensure that you have a professional install. It pays to get a professional out there to lay flooring down, because flooring is something that's going to be so visual, and you're going to look at it, you're going to traffic over it, and it's the first thing that people look at, whether they're sitting down or walking around, they'll look at the floors, and the floor gives you so much in a renovation. So don't do a cheap job. It's important to get a professional. You don't want tile joints that aren't lined up, and you don't want timber that's got trims in areas that aren't in the right place. It's important to get that part right. My advice is to get a professional to install. If you are going to do it yourself, then ensure that you've done your homework, do all your due diligence, study it, and ensure you can do the job the same as a professional if you back yourself on that. But this is the part I always tend to, if there's one part of the renovation that I would say get a professional to do the work, get them to do that flooring part. Paint could be different, but the flooring, leave it up to the professionals. They'll warrant their work, they'll warrant their materials, and then you've got something to protect your asset. When you're choosing your materials, don't choose a cheap material, okay? A floor area is going to be something that's going to be used virtually every day of the week. If you're in that room, people are walking on it, you might be moving furniture around on it, you'll have kids playing on it, you'll have guests, you need to clean it, there's going to be lots of different chemicals on there. So cheap materials, you might think you're going to get a bargain to save, but will they last, will they fade, will they change the appearance? Very important. And that brings me to my next point about you want something stylish, and people go for the trends and the looks of what they want, but is it functional? If you're outside in a patio, are you going to have something that's going to be looking great, but if you get a bit of moisture on there, is someone going to slip over? It needs to be a non-slip, it needs to be something that's durable, handle with a bit of UV light. If you're going inside a bathroom, obviously the cleaning, kitchens, etc., where kids or spillages are going to happen. If you're going with vinyl or timber flooring, is it resilient enough to handle the environment you're going with? So don't always just go for the stylish look. Do your homework on the style, the appearance you want, and something that's going to last the test of time. Because as I always tell you, build, even though it might be the dream home that you're going to stay in forever, always renovate and build for the time or a day that you may want to sell. And if your floors are in good nick, you can always give the home a quick lick of paint. But if the flooring is in good condition, it's going to save you lots of money with your renovation and enable you to sell and give that value back to your future buyer. And also takes a big headache away from having to do those floors again in the future. If you've got any questions on this, we do have our go-to professionals that can help you with this, and they've got lots of experience from tiling experts to carpentry to designers that can help in this piece. But it's important that, again, flooring choices, take your time. This is not an area to rush into. Understand what you want. So it may pay to go to one of our go-to professionals to book a one-on-one and have that advice thrown at them. Otherwise, come to our Monster crew. They're here to help and answer any of your questions you may have on flooring or flooring products or your surfaces. We had a client recently that showed us all their photos of a floor they pulled up and all the moisture, and we went through the whole gamut of options from termite treatments to floor underlays and vapor barriers. Happy customer at the end. So we are there to help you on your journey with selecting that right floor. Until next time on the Renault Q&A show, I'll see you then.